You held it up to the light, you pressed it against your face, both eyes open, and you pulled the lever down with your finger. Click, and there it was, the Grand Canyon, not a photograph, not a painting on a postcard. The Grand Canyon in 3 dimensions, so deep and so real that your stomach dropped because for 1 second, standing in your living room in Ohio, you were standing on the edge of a cliff in Arizona. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you are watching from. That click changed everything. It was a sound every kid in America knew. The mechanical snap of the lever advancing the reel 1 notch and a new image appearing in front of your eyes like a window opening onto somewhere you'd never been. Niagara Falls, Yellowstone, the Statue of Liberty, the Space Needle, Carlsbad Caverns, Disneyland, every wonder in America fit inside a circular piece of cardboard with 14 tiny photographs on it, and every one of those photographs had depth. The water at Niagara actually looked like it was falling. The trees in Yellowstone actually looked like they were standing in front of the mountains, and the Grand Canyon actually looked like it could swallow you whole. Your parents bought you the viewer at a gift shop. That's how it worked. You went on vacation, your father driving, your mother navigating, your sister kicking your seat from behind, and when you finally arrived at wherever you were going, there was a rack of Viewmaster reels right next to the postcards and the keychains and the little ceramic figurines that said greetings from somewhere. Your mother let you pick one, maybe 2 if you'd been good in the car. You held those reels in your hand the whole way home, and the minute you walked through the front door, you ran to your room and loaded the first one into the viewer and pulled the lever, and you were back. Back at the canyon, back at the falls, back at the place you just left. Except now you could visit it whenever you wanted, for as long as you wanted, without your sister kicking your seat. Some of you got your first Viewmaster for Christmas. It came in a box with the viewer and 3 reels, and the reels were always places you'd never been, like Mount Rushmore, the Everglades, and the Golden Gate Bridge. You sat on the living room floor in your pajamas and held it up to the Christmas tree lights because it needed a light source to work, and the tree made the images glow warm and golden. Your grandmother asked to try it, and you handed it to her, and she held it up to her face and went quiet for a moment because she'd never seen the Grand Canyon either, and now she was seeing it in 3 dimensions from a recliner in Indiana. You brought reels to school, not the viewer, that was too big, and your teacher would have confiscated it, but the reels themselves. You held them up to the classroom window, squinted through the tiny frames, and passed them around at recess. The kid who had been to Disneyland had the Disneyland reel, and during lunch he would hold it up to the light, and you could see the Matterhorn, the Jungle Cruise, and the spinning teacups, and for a minute you hated him because he had been there and you had not. Then he let you look, and the Matterhorn was right there, 3 inches from your eye, in 3 dimensions, and you forgave him everything. The man who invented it was an organ builder. That's the part nobody knows. William Gruber was a German immigrant living in Portland, Oregon, who made his living tuning and repairing pipe organs. But his obsession was photography, specifically stereoscopic photography, the technique of taking 2 pictures a few inches apart to create a 3-dimensional image. In 1938, Gruber was on vacation at the Oregon Caves National Monument, lugging around a homemade rig of 2 cameras strapped together on a tripod when a man named Harold Graves accidentally walked into one of his shots. Graves was the president of Sawyer's, the largest postcard company in America. The 2 men started talking, and by the time they walked out of that cave, they had a plan. Gruber would design a portable viewer for his 3-dimensional photos. Sawyer's would manufacture it. They would call it the Viewmaster. Gruber hated the name. He thought it sounded like Toastmaster or Mixmaster or some other kitchen appliance. But the product launched at the 1939 New York World's Fair, and it did not matter what they called it. People could not stop looking through it. The images were shot on Kodachrome, the most vivid color film ever made, and mounted on circular reels that clicked through the viewer one frame at a time. It was marketed to adults as an alternative to the postcard. It was sold at camera shops, stationery stores, and gift shops across the country, and within 2 years, more than 100,000 retailers were carrying it. Then the war came and the Viewmaster went to work. The United States military ordered 100,000 viewers and millions of reels for training, aircraft identification, ship recognition, terrain orientation. The same device that showed you Niagara Falls was now teaching soldiers to identify enemy planes. When the war ended, millions of veterans came home already knowing what a Viewmaster was. They bought them for their children, and the children looked through them, pulled the lever, heard the click, and saw the world the same way their fathers had, one frame at a time in 3 dimensions from the comfort of a living room floor. By the 1950s, Sawyer's bought their competitor True Vux, and with it came the license that changed everything Disney. Suddenly, the Viewmaster wasn't just showing you the Grand Canyon. It was showing you Cinderella's castle and Peter Pan and Sleeping Beauty in 3-dimensional images so vivid that the characters seemed to stand right in front of you. This was decades before home video. There was no VCR, no DVD, no streaming. If you wanted to see Disney at home, you looked through a Viewmaster. That was it. That was the only way. And it was magical. You probably had a box of reels somewhere in your house, a shoebox, or the original yellow carrying case with the handle on top, stuffed with circular discs organized by nothing except the order you had shoved them in. National parks mixed with cartoon characters, mixed with vacation souvenirs, mixed with the reel your uncle brought back from Graceland with Elvis's Jungle Room on it. Every reel was a place, every click was a trip. And on a rainy Saturday afternoon, when there was nothing on television and your mother wouldn't let you go outside, you sat on the edge of your bed with the viewer pressed to your face and you traveled the world. 7 pictures per reel, 14 images total, 7 for each eye, and each one was a destination. You could go to Rome and come back before lunch. Some of those reels told stories, not just scenic views, but complete narratives, fairy tales shot in miniature dioramas with hand-painted figures, staged and photographed frame by frame. Cinderella, Jack and the Beanstalk, Hansel and Gretel. The 3-dimensional effect made the tiny figures look alive. The witch in Hansel and Gretel was genuinely frightening in 3 dimensions, more frightening than any picture book, because she was right there, inches from your face, reaching toward you with her gnarled hands. You could close the viewer and she'd disappear. You could open it and she'd be back. You were in control. That was the magic of it. You decided when to look and when to stop. You decided when to click forward and when to stay. The Viewmaster put you in charge of the journey. There was something else about it that no one talks about: the quiet. When you pressed the viewer to your face, the world went away. The room went dark. The sounds went muffled. It was just you in the image, you in the Grand Canyon, you in Niagara Falls, you in the inside of a cave in New Mexico that your parents promised you'd visit someday. It was the first virtual reality any of us ever experienced. Not because the technology was sophisticated, but because the isolation was complete. Nothing existed except what was inside those 2 tiny windows. For a few seconds, you were somewhere else entirely, and coming back, pulling the viewer away from your face and blinking at the ceiling of your bedroom felt like landing. A man named Chuck Harrison redesigned the viewer in the late 1950s, and most people never knew his name or what he looked like. Harrison was one of the first African-American industrial designers in the country. He made the ViewMaster lighter, more colorful, and easier for children to use, replacing the heavy Bakelite with injection-molded plastic, adding bright colors, and making the lever smoother. His redesign turned the ViewMaster from an adult novelty into a children's essential. Every kid who grew up with the red or blue or orange viewer was holding Chuck Harrison's work in their hands. The talking ViewMaster came later, a version with a tiny record embedded in the reel that played sound as you advanced the frames. Your friend's parents brought one back from a trip to America, and it was like holding a movie theater in your hands. Kids lined up to take turns. In the 1970s, there was nothing like it. Nothing even close. You could see and hear the story unfold, one click at a time, 3 dimensions deep, and then it started to slip away. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just slowly, the way everything from that era disappeared, one small decision at a time. VCRS arrived, then DVDS, then the internet, then smartphones. Why would a kid hold a plastic viewer up to the light and look at 7 photographs of the Grand Canyon when he could watch a drone fly through it on YouTube in 4K? The economics were simple and devastating. By 2008, Fisher-Price, which had acquired the brand through Mattel, announced that they were stopping production of scenic travel reels. The factories would close, the reel cutting machines would go silent, custom and commercial reels, they said, would never again be made. Never again. That's what they said. The Grand Canyon reel, the Niagara Falls reel, the Yellowstone reel, the Disneyland reel, the reel your father bought you at that gift shop in Arizona when you were 7 years old. Never again. The racks at the gift shops were taken down. The souvenir stands emptied. The places you visited on vacation no longer offered you a way to take them home in 3 dimensions. They offered you a refrigerator magnet instead. Years before that happened, you'd tried to give the magic to your own children. You bought a ViewMaster at Toys R Us, a newer model, brighter plastic, not quite the same, and you loaded a reel and handed it to your 6-year-old and waited. You watched their face. You waited for the moment you remembered, the catch of breath, the widening of the eyes, the pull of the lever, and it happened. Not as dramatically as you remembered, because nothing ever is, but it happened. They saw something through that viewer that surprised them, and you felt it in your chest, the passing of a small, plastic, circular piece of your childhood into their hands. Some of you did the same with your grandchildren. You pulled out the old viewer from a drawer, found a reel from 1968, and held it up for a child born in 2015. They looked through it and said cool and moved on to their iPad. But you saw the look, the brief, unmistakable flash of wonder before the world pulled them back. It was enough. What's left is a name on a box at Walmart for $12. It's plastic. It has Dora the Explorer inside. It is not a ViewMaster, not the one you knew, not the one that showed you the world from your bedroom floor while the rain hit the window and your mother made dinner downstairs and the only sound in the room was the click of the lever and the catch of your breath when the Grand Canyon appeared 6 inches from your eyes. You can still find the old reels, estate sales, antique malls, eBay at 2 in the morning. There are collectors with 25,000 reels cataloged and stored. There are people who have spent decades preserving every scenic title ever made because they understand something that Mattel forgot, that a 7-year-old looking at the Grand Canyon through a ViewMaster isn't just looking at a picture. He's learning that the world is bigger than his street, bigger than his town, bigger than anything he's ever seen from the back seat of his father's car. And that feeling, that first time, 3-dimensional, stomach-dropping feeling of standing on the edge of something enormous cannot be replicated by a phone screen. It never could. 1.5 billion reels, 100 million viewers, 70 years of clicks, and then silence. If the ViewMaster was part of your childhood, tell us in the comments, what was the first reel you ever looked through?